It was a humid Thursday evening in Cedar Heights, a quiet but racially divided Midwestern suburb. At around 6:45 p.m., Andre Keller stepped out of a modest rental car parked in front of a local convenience store. Dressed in jeans, a gray hoodie, and a baseball cap, he looked like any ordinary man stopping in for a bottle of water. To anyone watching, he was just another face in the neighborhood, and that was exactly how he wanted it. What no one knew was that Andre was on assignment, discreetly surveying a potential cyber threat source linked to a foreign hacking ring. His job demanded invisibility. That anonymity shattered within minutes. Officer Brad Connors, a white heavyset patrolman in his early 40s, spotted Andre from his cruiser across the street. Connors was known for his aggressive attitude, especially toward young black men, though he'd never faced formal charges. His eyes narrowed as he watched Andre walk into the store, making a snap judgment. Probably casing the place, Connors mumbled to himself before turning on his lights and pulling up beside the parked car. He waited for Andre to come back out. As Andre exited the store, Connors stepped out of his vehicle. "Hey, you come here," he barked. Andre, used to being cautious in unfamiliar territory, approached calmly. "Is there a problem, officer? You tell me. This your car?" "Yes. It's a rental registered under my name." "You can see the paperwork." Connors waved it off. "You look nervous." "Got eyed?" Andre pulled out his wallet, showing both his government-issued driver's license and a federal NSA credential, discreet but authentic. Connors squinted at it, then chuckled dismissively. "Nice fake badge. What, you think that'll scare me?" "It's real," Andre said evenly, trying to de-escalate. "I'm a federal employee. I'd appreciate it if you could step back. Hands where I can see 'em." Connors barked, suddenly raising his voice. "Turn around." Andre hesitated. "Sir, I don't want any trouble, but you're making a mistake." That was enough. Within moments, Connors was behind him, wrenching his arms and snapping on handcuffs. "Resisting arrest now, huh? That's another charge." Bystanders began recording. A middle-aged woman across the street muttered, "He didn't do nothin'," while another man yelled, "Yo, he showed you ID." Andre didn't resist. He stayed quiet as Connors shoved him into the cruiser, talking loudly about thugs who think they're above the law. Inside the vehicle, Andre stared straight ahead. He knew what would come next: booking, a night in a holding cell, and formal charges designed to humiliate. But what Connors didn't know, and would soon regret, was that Andre Keller wasn't just any government employee. He was a top-secret cleared NSA operative with the kind of clearance that made senators nervous. He had chosen to avoid pulling rank, but now he realized he may have to let the truth surface. As the cruiser pulled away, lights flashing, Andre silently began planning his next move. Not out of revenge, but out of principle. There had to be accountability. And if justice couldn't be found on the street, maybe it could still be found in court. The countdown to a courtroom reckoning had already begun. 3 days later, the Cedar Heights Municipal Court buzzed with a routine clamor of minor offenses, parking violations, petty theft, a few domestic disturbances. In the middle of the docket sat State v. Andre Keller, charged with obstruction of justice and resisting arrest. On paper, it looked like just another open and shut misdemeanor case. No one, not the court staff, the judge, or even the handful of bored spectators, had any idea what was about to unfold. Andre entered quietly, dressed in a plain navy blue suit, glasses on, carrying a slim folder. His demeanor was calm, collected, and disciplined, a sharp contrast to the stereotype Officer Brad Connors had painted in his arrest report. Despite this, Connors, standing arrogantly across the courtroom in full uniform, continued to smirk. as if the outcome was already guaranteed. The judge, Hun, Meredith Talcott, an aging, no-nonsense magistrate known for rushing through minor cases, barely looked up as she reviewed the report. "Mr. Keller, do you have legal representation?" "No, Your Honor. I'll be representing myself," Andre replied respectfully. Connors gave a low, amused laugh, audible enough for his fellow officers on the bench behind him to chuckle too. To them, this wasn't a trial. It was an inconvenience. A formal stamp before a fine and maybe some community service. The prosecutor, a young assistant district attorney named Carla Finch, stepped up to present the state's case. She called Connors to the stand and walked him through his version of events. Suspicious behavior, refused to follow commands, attempted to walk away, and non-cooperation. Connors leaned into every word, exaggerating his tone just enough to make Andre seem aggressive without sounding too overt. "Did the defendant show you identification?" Finch asked. "He showed me something that looked like a DC badge," Connors said, grinning. "Could have been a toy. For all I know, these guys pull that trick all the time." Andre sat still, never breaking eye contact. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. When the prosecution rested, Judge Talcott turned to Andre. "You may proceed with your defense." Andre stood and walked to the front with a confidence that caught the judge's attention. "Your Honor, I'd like to begin by clarifying my identity and presenting factual contradictions in Officer Connors' testimony." Connors rolled his eyes, but the judge nodded. "Go ahead." Andre began calmly, methodically. He pointed out inconsistencies in the police report. The timeline didn't match GPS data. The body cam footage wasn't submitted properly. And Connors never ran the ID he was handed, a violation of protocol. "Do you have evidence to support your claims?" The judge asked, more intrigued now. Andre paused, then reached into his folder. "Yes, ma'am. But before I submit it, I need to officially identify myself." He placed a sleek black ID case on the stand and opened it. Inside was a gold-trimmed NSA badge and credentials signed by the Deputy Director of National Security. The courtroom went still. Connors' smirk dropped. The other officers exchanged stunned looks. Judge Talcott slowly leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "I'm a Deputy Division Chief with the National Security Agency," Andre said calmly, "and I assure you, that badge is not a toy." The mood in the courtroom had shifted. What was supposed to be a routine conviction had suddenly become a moment of reckoning. And for the first time, Officer Connors looked afraid. The courtroom sat frozen for several long seconds. No one moved. Officer Connors' jaw hung open slightly, his face pale. Judge Talcott blinked twice, then slowly leaned closer, carefully examining the credentials on the stand before her. There was no mistaking the emblem, the unmistakable seal of the National Security Agency, stamped beside a high-level clearance designation. Deputy Division Chief, Cyber Operations, Mr. Keller. "Are you telling this court you're a federal intelligence officer?" she asked, her voice lower now, measured double quotes. "Yes, Your Honor," Andre replied calmly. "I have been employed with the NSA for 17 years. I am tasked with national cyber threat prevention and internal security protocol enforcement. My presence in Cedar Heights was part of a classified surveillance assignment, one which I can no longer complete thanks to my unlawful detainment." Gasps and whispers erupted in the gallery. The handful of officers in the courtroom exchanged nervous glances. Connors shifted on the witness stand, visibly sweating now. The judge banged her gavel. Silence in the court. Andre stepped forward. "With the court's permission, I would like to introduce digital evidence, including body cam audio enhancement and satellite tracked location metadata, to correct the fabricated narrative presented by Officer Connors." The judge hesitated. clearly unsure whether she was now sitting in a local court or in the middle of a federal security issue. Still, she nodded. Proceed. Andre pulled out a tablet loaded with forensic software developed by the NSA. It had live, authenticated timestamps, geolocation markers, and proprietary image enhancement tools. Exhibit A, Andre began, enhanced bodycam audio. Notice the officer's language as I present my ID. He pressed play. In the silent courtroom. Connor's voice rang out, sarcastic and sneering. Oh, what's this? A shiny badge? What did you do? Order this online? Think that makes you special, boy? Several people in the gallery flinched. Even the prosecutor's expression changed. Exhibit B, Andre continued, flipping to another screen. Timeline. Overlay. This shows my exact location during the incident. It confirms that I stood still, presented ID, and verbally cooperated, contrary to Connor's claims. Judge Talcott's eyes widened as the GPS timeline contradicted the officer's report line by line. And finally, Andre said, turning slowly toward Connors, Exhibit C, internal NSA security logs indicating that I was performing sanctioned federal work at the time of my arrest. He handed a sealed document to the judge, stamped eyes only declassified for court use. The weight of its presence was unmistakable. The judge sat back in silence, reading for several seconds. When she looked up, her tone had completely changed. This court was prepared to issue judgment on what appeared to be a simple misdemeanor, she said slowly. But we now face a potential abuse of power against a federal agent, one who was arrested while performing his duty. Connor's mouth opened to speak, but no words came out. Andre spoke once more. Your Honor, I didn't reveal my role at the time because I believed cooperation was enough. I thought I'd be treated like any other citizen. Clearly, I was wrong. The courtroom was no longer on Andre's side. They were in awe of him. The mood had shifted entirely. The judge called for a recess. But one thing was now certain. What began as a routine case had just exploded into a national scandal. After the recess, the courtroom returned with a thick electric tension in the air. Word of the case had already started to spread through local media, and reporters were beginning to gather outside. Inside, the atmosphere was no longer casual. It was dead serious. Judge Talcott entered with a tighter jaw, clearly aware that this was no longer a routine misdemeanor. She glanced briefly at Andre Keller, who sat calmly, tablet and sealed folders before him. Officer Connors, once smug and confident, now sat stiffly, his face drained of color. Mr. Keller, the judge began, you may proceed with your remaining evidence. Andre stood and connected his tablet to the courtroom projector. Thank you, Your Honor. What I'm about to present is unaltered, time-sensed, and forensically authenticated footage pulled from Officer Connor's own body cam and satellite data. With your permission, I will play the critical 2-minute segment of the encounter. The screen came to life. Andre's arrest, from Connor's perspective, played out before the court. The footage was overlaid with audio enhancement and GPS data. The difference was staggering compared to the vague police report. The courtroom heard Andre's calm voice. Yes, officer, here is my ID. This is a federal credential. Then Connor's dismissive reply. Nice fake badge. What, are you trying to impersonate a Fed boy? The murmurs began again. The racial undertone in the officer's tone was impossible to miss. Next, the footage clearly showed Andre standing still, arms slightly raised, not moving. There was no aggression, no resistance. Yet Connors escalated quickly, shouting, Turn around. Hands behind your back. Before yanking Andre's arm violently, the video froze on a keyframe. Andre showing his badge, clearly visible under high-resolution enhancement. Andre turned to the judge. "This proves I identified myself before any alleged obstruction or resistance." Officer Connors not only ignored it, he mocked it and falsified his report to justify an illegal arrest. "Objection!" the prosecutor called out, though weakly. "Overruled," Judge Talcott said sharply, her focus locked on the screen. "Continue, Mr. Keller." Andre switched files. This next slide overlays timestamps from the arrest report with satellite-tracked movement logs. Connors stated, "I attempted to walk away, but the data shows I remained stationary the entire time." The judge stared at the map, watching a digital marker of Andre's location remain motionless while Connors' cruiser circled. And finally, Andre said, pulling out another sealed envelope, "This is a sworn statement from my NSA division chief, confirming I was operating under federal clearance on a classified mission." He handed it to the judge. She opened it, read in silence, then looked up slowly. "This changes everything." There was no theatrical moment, no shouting, just silence. Heavy, undeniable silence. Connors looked like a man sinking into the floor. The gallery, some of whom had smirked earlier at Andre's self-representation, now looked at him with wide eyes. "I will be referring this matter to the Department of Justice," Judge Talcott said firmly. "Additionally, this court finds probable cause for investigation into Officer Connors' conduct, including potential civil rights violations and abuse of authority." Andre said nothing. He didn't gloat. He simply sat down, composed, and steady. Justice was no longer hypothetical. It had a face, a badge, and undeniable proof, and its name was Andre Keller. By the following morning, the courthouse footage had gone viral. What began as a quiet misdemeanor hearing had exploded into a nationwide firestorm. A clip showing Andre Keller calmly revealing his NSA credentials while Officer Brad Connors mocked and dismissed him was now making the rounds on every major social media platform, racking up millions of views under hashtags like #NSAoperative, #JusticeForAndre, and #RacistCopExposed. News outlets scrambled for interviews and details. "Federal agent arrested by ignorant cop while on duty," read one headline. "NSA operative outsmarts racist officer in courtroom showdown," said another. The public was stunned and furious. In Cedar Heights, the impact was immediate. The police chief, already under quiet scrutiny for past complaints involving Officer Connors, held a press conference. Sweating under the heat of reporters' questions, he tried to downplay the situation. "We are cooperating fully with federal investigators. Officer Connors has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review," he said, avoiding eye contact with cameras. But it wasn't enough. Protests erupted outside the courthouse and police headquarters. Signs reading "Respect Black Intelligence," "Racism in Uniform," and "He showed the badge, you chose the cuffs" filled the streets. The local community, long frustrated by unchecked police behavior, finally had a face and a case strong enough to spark change. Inside the courthouse, Judge Talcott issued an official statement the next day, clarifying that Andre Keller's rights had been violated under color of law, and recommending the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division open an inquiry into Connors' conduct and the police department's pattern of behavior. Meanwhile, Andre remained quiet. He refused all media interviews, instead spending time speaking privately with a Justice Department official who had flown in from D.C. overnight, though the team privately with a Justice Department official who had flown in from D.C. overnight, though the NSA hadn't authorized his courtroom revelations. They stood behind him, cautiously. The agency released a vague statement. "We support the integrity and dignity of all our personnel and expect all Americans to be treated with respect, regardless of rank or assignment." Behind closed doors, Andre was offered a discreet exit. He could return to headquarters, avoid further public drama, and let the legal system run its course. But he declined. Calmly and firmly, he informed his supervisors that he would see the situation through, not as a spy, but as a citizen. Back in Cedar Heights, the prosecutor, Carla Finch, formally dropped all charges against Andre and issued a written apology, a rare move that only highlighted the gravity of the situation. As for Connors, the writing was on the wall. He faced suspension, loss of pension, and possible federal charges. Internal Affairs had begun re-examining his past arrest records. Already, 3 prior complaints from black residents, previously ignored, were being reopened. Andre, though, did not celebrate. He remained focused and quiet. His only public statement was a brief one, delivered at a small press gathering outside the courthouse. This was never about revenge. It was about accountability. I stood up because I knew I could. I stood up because so many others couldn't. And with that, he walked away, composed, private, and resolute. The world now knew his name. But for Andre Keller, this wasn't about fame. It was about making sure the system finally saw what it tried so hard to ignore. Weeks passed, but the echo of Andre Keller's courtroom stand still reverberated across the nation. His silent defiance and calm exposure of systemic injustice had become a symbol, not of resistance through rage, but of dismantling oppression with undeniable truth. Andre had gone viral not because he shouted, but because he didn't have to. Back in Washington, D.C., the halls of the NSA buzzed with internal discussions. His identity, once highly classified, had become national news. Several superiors had mixed feelings about the situation, concerned that Keller's actions might draw too much attention to classified fieldwork. Others, however, admired his restraint and precision under pressure. He hadn't exposed secrets. He'd exposed a lie and done so within the legal system. Andre was summoned to headquarters for a closed door debrief with top-level officials. In the room sat senior NSA directors and a liaison from the Department of Justice. The mood was respectful, but serious. "You took a risk," one director said, "but you held your ground. And you reminded the country that we don't just defend freedom abroad, we must defend it here too." Andre was offered 2 paths: return to his quiet life in cyber ops or accept a new position, one that would take him beyond intelligence and into policy reform. The DOJ had requested his expertise to help spearhead a joint federal initiative, a task force that investigated the intersection of local law enforcement abuse and national security conflicts, especially concerning minority federal employees. Andre accepted. His new office wasn't a war room of computers. It was a bridge between agencies, built to hold systems accountable. He'd worked directly with both federal and local bodies to identify bias-based arrests, wrongful detainments, and civil rights breaches that threatened not only lives, but federal missions. He was no longer just an analyst. He had become a force of reform. Meanwhile, the investigation into Officer Brad Connors had moved swiftly. Thanks to Andre's courtroom evidence and mounting public pressure, Connors was fired, charged with falsifying a police report, and referred to the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. A grand jury was in progress, and more victims, mostly black and brown men who'd been unfairly targeted, were coming forward. In Cedar Heights, change began to take root. The police department launched its first ever civilian oversight board. Officers were now required to undergo federal-level bias and conduct training. Body cams would be monitored by an independent audit firm. And perhaps most significantly, the City Council passed a resolution honoring Andre Keller for his commitment to justice, truth, and national service. But Andre remained out of the spotlight. In the final scene, he walks into a federal building in D.C., now wearing a suit with an NSA lapel pin. Reporters try to catch him for a comment. He politely declines, simply nodding and moving on. Later, he sits alone in his office. On the wall hangs a single framed quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Andre Keller didn't set out to become a symbol. He set out to do his job, but in doing so, he reminded a nation that no badge, no title, and no power protects anyone from the truth. And in the end, he didn't need protection. The system did.